Hey you guys, this is Jason, and in this series on how to sell your land in Texas, as a land investor, I often get asked by people how to read a land survey. How do I read a survey? Maybe you already had a survey that had been done previously for your property. You got the document from the county recorder's office or with the documents from the title company when you bought the property, but you don't really understand it. Or maybe you ordered a survey or getting ready to order a survey and you want to know what to expect and what you can do to read this and understand it. Okay, so particularly for land in Texas, but in reality, surveys are all read in the same way in any of the states in the United States. So first, what are the two types of surveys? Okay, so there are two types of surveys. The first, there technically could be more, but two typical and common types of surveys with land. And the first is a boundary survey. And the boundary survey is most likely what you're going to order. It's the cheaper of the two, and it's very common when you want to build a fence or you want to build a house or driveway on the property. And basically what it does is it establishes the corners and the property lines. And they're going to physically mark these corners, and you can then put a line between them and create your fence line, your property line. Maybe if you're going to build a house and you need to know the standoff off your property line, they're also going to mark where that's at. So a surveyor is very common on a building site or for a developer or a home builder, because they usually need to mark these things in order to start the building process and even to get a permit. Okay, the second type is a topographical survey. Now, a lot of people do order topographical surveys for their property because they want to. But this actually locates different improvements on the property. It locates features like the elevation, the contour of the land, and they actually even take thousands sometimes, depending on the size of the property, of measurements to find out the exact topography, drain, fall, waterways, etc. So these are usually required for more extensive development projects like commercial buildings or apartment complexes and things where they're going to put parking lots in and different things that have elevations that would be important. Now they're more expensive because it's a lot more work for the surveyor. Now a boundary survey is usually the most affordable. I say affordable. It's very rare to find a survey for less than $1,000. Most surveys are going to be around the $2,000 to $5,000 range. When you get into larger rural properties, it's going to depend on the amount of acreage because they have to walk or drive a four-wheeler to different places to do that. Now, how do they take a survey? They actually go out with a total station, which if we look here, the picture here is of a gentleman with a total station. And it's this thing on a tripod that measures angles. And then he has another guy with him that uses a prism. And he marks the exact places using the property's deed from the creation of the deed. When the property was subdivided off a larger parcel way back when, they actually use the information and legal descriptions off that deed. Usually what they do is they read meets and bounds on a property's deed. And we'll have another video explaining how to read legal descriptions on your deed. So let's take a look at a couple surveys. So the first survey here I'm showing you is actually a plat of survey for a larger section of land. So this is a 1 mile section. So property, especially in the western half of the United States, but in most of the states, there's quite a few areas from the Mississippi River and even in the Midwest over that are all sectioned off in block and section. And so they have townships, blocks, and sections. And the section is a 1 mile by 1 mile square. That's 640 acres. So what happens is people will buy these sections and then they quarter section them down. So back when the original settlers went, they'd get a quarter section, 160 acres, which would just be a quarter corner of this. Now, what's happened here is this is a property in Texas. Some properties that we bought, the stars are the indicators of those. And they had been sectioned off 30 years ago by a company that bought this 1 mile square, and they sold it off in 20 acre section or 20 acre lots or tracts. So they're all numbered. So on our deed, it would say, tract 10 of section 121. So that was this one right here. And this is 20.196 acres. So we were able to get this information from the county, get this map from the county. And with that map, we were able to see which one is our plot and section. But this larger section will have stakes. Now they should have went and put stakes in each of these lots, but sometimes they do what's called a paper survey, and they just did it on paper. So I'm not sure on this particular one if they actually had stakes at the lots or not, but it does show us the access easements, and it shows us kind of the layout. So usually you'll start with a section map, but then if you hire a surveyor to come out to your property and create an actual boundary survey, it's going to look something like this. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this a little bit to see some of these features closer. It says it right here. Survey plat, all of lot number 26 of the Lake Louise subdivision in Wood County, Texas. So something important is on the surveyor's plat, there's going to be always a map or a drawing. They usually draw these out in AutoCAD. It's a program. They used to do it by hand, but now they're drawn in a computer program. And it'll show a few features, like you can see right here, frame residence. So there's a home on this property, and they kind of have where it's located in a concrete driveway. Now it's interesting that this driveway seems to go to across the property. So I'm assuming these people own that property as well, but it would be a problem if you sold them separately. Half your driveway would be off. There are situations where people have a driveway, a roadway, or something that's not actually on their property. It was built by someone, they didn't have a survey done, and it can be an issue. So when the surveyor comes out, he draws these out and he sets stakes or rods. So it says set a 1/2-inch rod. So what they do is they take a piece of iron pipe or steel rod, and they actually stake that into the ground. And it's important to find that. They're going to need to find that later. It'll stay there for a long time. They don't use wood because it would rot away. If you see these surveyor stakes, after you've done this, don't pull them up so you can mow, just mow around them. You want to leave them there. And then you can see it says north 52 degrees, 56 minutes, 21 seconds east. So this is a bearing. Okay, these are actually meets and bounds. These will also be written on some of your legal descriptions. And what that is it's the degrees of the angle. So it's 52 degrees north. This line is running 56 minutes, 21 seconds east. So it's a bearing. Like you could literally in the old days take a compass bearing for this. Now they use the total station equipment and they set it here at this point and they go up across in the bearing. And they have the distance written here. So this 98.62 is how many feet across the front of this lot is. And we can see the same thing here on this side of the lot. It's 134.90 feet. And we can see at the bottom it's 215.40 feet. So it's giving us the perimeter distances. So if you were to measure that out with a tape measure from stake to stake, you'd be able to know how big it is. You can actually do a little bit of math and run those shapes through some geometry and figure out the square footage and divide that out and find the acreage of that. Oftentimes on the survey, they will also put the acreage. I'm not seeing it on this one. It might say it somewhere. I'm just missing it. And any other features like Lake Louise is over here. And here's another rod they found, it says. So there's a seal on the survey, and surveyors are a state licensed professional in every state in the United States. So they would be registered with the State Board of Professional Regulation. You need to have someone who is licensed and registered to do this. And they're going to put their seal, their licensing seal here. And here at the bottom, you can see this was Creel Surveying, but they always have the company name and info. If there's any question in the future, or maybe if you want an update of that survey, you want someone to come back out and find those stakes for you, oftentimes by contacting the same surveying company, you can get quite a bit better deal. Because they already have the information in their records, and they can come back out and locate it for you and help mark those property lines. Okay, let's take a look at another example. This is just a little bit more modern one, a little more detail on here. This is a smaller building lot. Looks like it's on a cul-de-sac of some sort. And this is a little clearer to read and more common. You can see these round dots. These are iron rods found. So all of these surveys actually always will have a scale. This is 1 to 30. The previous was 1 to 25. And they usually always have a compass too, so you kind of know which way it's looking if you were to hold the map. And this was actually by Dynasty Custom Homes. So as I said, usually they need a survey in order to get a building permit. And the surveyor has marked those property lines so they can put a fence in and different things in and figure out their building offsets. So you can see 6-foot building line. This is actually the offset. So they've marked that here, and they've probably marked it somewhere, not usually with a stake, but maybe they marked it with some spray paint on the grass or something for the builder. So he knows that he can't build beyond that. There's a 6-foot offset probably in this county. Some counties will have more offset. And then you can see there's a 10-foot utility easement on the back side here. I'll zoom into that. It says it says right here, there's a 10-foot utility easement along the back wall, and there's a concrete wall. And so that utility easement is probably where some power lines run or underground sewage lines run across there. And once again, you can see the meets and bounds description, these angles of measurement. So this was south 81 degrees, 25 minutes and 0 seconds east. So south by southeast bearing. And it's 143.5 feet long. And there's an iron rod found, which means the surveyor went out there and dug around, and he found whoever had previously subdivided this had left an iron rod in there. So he's working off a previous survey. And then iron rod was set. So he set that to define this lot. And there's other iron rods. It says he found one, and they found one here, and they found one there. So they only had to set one. They were able to find them. If they can find those rods, it's a little quicker and a little easier, obviously. And you can see 130.3 feet, and this is 42.75 feet. So you see the dimensions of the lot in that way. And then if we scroll down, there's a legend of explaining it, different things like the water valve and fire hydrant and things that they found here. And you can see the company that did it, and once again, their state license seal. Okay, so one last thing about reading a survey is once you have a survey done and you've read that survey, it's very important that you record that survey. Now, not necessarily is your surveyor going to do that for you. You probably want to ask them about it, but you should record it. So you can actually see here, this one, it says was recorded in volume 51, page 187 of the map records of Hidalgo County, Texas. So it's important to keep that on record, or the next person who buys the property from you, maybe you had it surveyed 10 years ago. Well, the property hasn't changed a lot. If it's on record and they want to build a fence, they can simply get that survey and have another surveyor come and find those stakes, or maybe they can even go look for the stakes themselves and find them. But if there's nothing on record, a lot of times the surveyor has to start from scratch and go even further back in the archives, and it can be quite a bit more work and more money for the person who owns the land now. So always go ahead and keep that on record. It's very important to do that, and you just go record it at the county recorder's office. I think it costs like 20 to 30 bucks depending on the county you're in, and it stays then on file with your deed in a permanent way. Okay, so that is the basics of understanding a land survey. Don't be intimidated by all the writing and all the numbers on there. Just look for the basics and understand it, and I hope that helps you. Stay tuned for more videos in this series on how to sell your land in Texas.